Welcome back to another heart-rending episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up. That is your main host, David Washington. I'm your host, Needs a Haircut, Kellen Clark. And today we're talking about the least controversial subject known to man, the history of U.S. slavery.
Oh boy, here we go,
And
right?
today we want to talk about reparations. How practical is it? How would it work if we were to do it? And of course, who would be eligible? And is there a better way to fight against systemic racism? And we came up with this story because we saw this clip. Well, a colleague of ours showed us a clip from Michael Knowles' show. And he noted Sonny Hostin, who is a host of The View, who descended from slave owners, didn't know it, but now thinks she's entitled to reparations. And while he primarily talks about, the moral aspects, and we're primarily going to talk about the policy aspects, we still want to show you the clip real fast just so you know why we came up with the idea of doing this. So we're going to show the clip now.
Sonny Hostin, a host at The View, who is Black, or is she? She recently went on the show of Henry Louis Gates. He's a liberal Harvard professor of Obama Beer Summit fame. Remember, he got hassled by the police a little bit, and then Obama weighed in and attacked the police, and then they all had a beer together for some reason. Anyway, and I'm going too much into detail here. Sonny Hostin went on his show, because he has a show where he traces people's genealogy back, and she discovered she's a descendant of slaveholders.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children.
Mm-hmm.
To know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Yeah, it's a fact of life, huh? It's really shocking. It's kind of depressing. It's kind of uh-oh. Then she goes on The View, and her View co-hosts say, "Hold on, Sonny, you've for so long been a promoter of reparations for slavery. Now that it turns out you're a descendant of slaveholders, does that change your view?"
When I spoke to my mom about it, she was deeply disappointed. She actually cried about it. And then she said, maybe that's why I have been so connected to Black culture, because it's an atonement in my spirit. And I received that. I also found out that, and there were slaves on both sides of our family, mothers and fathers, but we are 7% indigenous Puerto Rican, Taino. So I'm proud of that. I still believe in reparations, by the way, so y'all can stop texting me and emailing me and saying that I'm a white girl and that I don't deserve reparations. I still believe that.
Someone did that to you? Yeah. I don't know who sent her a thing telling her she was a white girl.
Okay, it's too much, people.
But clean off your television screen.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I still believe in reparations. I still believe this country has a lot to do in terms of racial justice.
I still believe in reparations, and I still believe that I deserve them, even though I am descended from slaveholders. Why does Sonny Hostin get to pick which ancestors count? Why does she get to do that, but we don't get to do that? She says, first of all, it's so pathetic. She says, look, I'm still descended from slaves, so I still get my black card. And I'm also descended from Taino Indians. I'm really happy about that. I'm so happy. I'd be so depressed if I were white, because it's evil to be white, because it's the worst thing you can possibly be. But I am part white, and specifically like slaveholders. So, but we're just going to ignore that, and I still deserve reparations, because the white ancestors don't count. Because white people are terrible, and whites have no culture, and even they have a culture which is evil, and that's why we have to punish them. But even though I'm part white, you don't have to count that part. You only count the good part, which is the indigenous part and the black part. Give me my reparations.
And with that, we are the kings of reaction content.
Voila.
Stood there and we looked at it.
Yes.
We didn't want to say too much because we wanted you guys to react for yourself. And if you want to see Michael's full take, you probably know who Michael Knowles is because he's a lot bigger than we are. We encourage you to go watch the full take if you wish.
He's on the Daily Wire network. Is that correct? Or
I believe so. Yes, he is. I believe so.
Great.
So he's very involved in the more conservative sphere of politics, and he did the thing that you expect most social media personalities to do.
Oh,
You
yeah.
talk about the people, you talk about the morality. Are they entitled? Are they justified? Yada yada and yada. But David, you and I kind of started to ask the question of who gets reparations, and does it have to be for slavery or systemic racism as a whole? What form does this stuff take? And I believe you had a story for us regarding
Right.
that.
So to answer this question, I'll use an example of a political campaign that we ran under Myers in Washington. It was for a candidate, Aretha Simons, who ran for Orlando mayor about 4 years ago. And part of her platform that we created was reparations. And it wasn't the type of reparations that most people would think of when they hear the word reparations for descendants of slaves. People will expect a check. And we knew that given the finances of the city of Orlando and also the appetite to write checks, just to write checks, that was not going to fly. So the idea of reparations I presented to Aretha would be in the form of civic engagement, activities, events where it will promote more civic engagement amongst certain communities and demographics here in the city of Orlando. For instance, the city of Orlando owns, say, the Kia Center or the Dr. Phillips Center, the theater space, performing arts space. Instead of having matinees that are half off to certain events, perhaps there would be either free or discounted tickets available to students from predominantly Black and Brown communities or schools, and getting them more involved in the performing arts, and not just during the matinees, but during the weekends, the evenings, where they can get the full experience of being in that cultural environment, that socioeconomic environment. Also, part of the package would be um, special discounts or year-round, everyday discounts to the museum campus for disadvantaged youth or Black and Brown communities throughout the year, to the Museum of Modern Art, the Natural Science Museum, so forth and so on. But the reparations would come in a way of engaging a certain demographic of the community in the cultural aspects of what the area offers.
And I don't know if you guys there have hit on, in a couple words, what he's pointing out: social mobility. Because when people long term who have been impacted, by systemic racism, it becomes in the form of harder to get opportunities.
Right.
Opportunities they don't exist where you live, maybe not, right? Or you didn't have enough money to go to a summer camp. You didn't have enough money to, you know, see more what the world has to offer, to give you more passion, to show you alternate ways to advance your career. A lot of us, more socioeconomically advantaged people, take it for granted. We take for granted the fact that we can go to a performing arts center, and watch an orchestra if we want to. If we want to play an instrument, we can afford to rent one.
Mhm.
If you want to go to art school, you can afford to go to art school, and it won't necessarily disable you for the rest of your life financially.
Right. And it's costly.
Very costly. So you get different types of opportunities, in a sense, dependent on where you're born. And it is very clear that there are people impacted.
Mhm.
But is Sonny Hostin one of those people? No. And this is why this has been such a challenging issue ever since the end of the Civil War. The first form of reparations that was introduced, it was thought up by Charles Sumner and friends and Frederick Douglass and friends, that
Okay.
kind of sphere. And it took the form of a military order from General William Tecumseh Sherman. And he said 40 acres and a mule.
Okay.
The Civil War is in its back end, the west, mostly the west side of the Confederacy. So much of this land gets captured. And because, it's kind of an enemy state, they were able, the United States military, to hold this land. And he said, so they were going to allocate a massive amount of it to take away from some of the rich white people and provide it to their now former slaves.
Right.
The idea being that a slave can farm their own land, build their own wealth. Not to mention, landowning back then was a much more powerful symbol of power than it is even today.
Exactly.
It gave them that metaphorical power. It gave them the ability to farm their own land, and they also gave them a mule, not just to do jobs, but those rich white people, they can afford to buy land. They could sell it back to them if they wanted to, take that money and move to the American frontier or move to a more northern state, and essentially provide them options, provide them the ability to make their own decisions. Because even though we like to say, oh, you shouldn't treat people differently depending on their skin color, where they're born, you have to acknowledge that sometimes they're not, due to more physical reasons, unable to fully take control of their destiny. And that's what happened when Andrew Johnson voided that order. Slaves didn't really have options, so they became sharecroppers, and it disadvantaged them for a long time. 160 years ago, though, and there has been so many different forms since then. Redlining policy, a lot of the war on drugs, so many other type of policies. And I asked the question, why are we doing reparations for slavery when not only it's hard to determine who benefits, from these reparations, how do you actually do them, how long ago slavery was?
Mhm.
But I think there are better options. I mean, what do you think about that?
First of all, cutting the check, expecting the check in the mail, it's impractical. We're looking at trillions and trillions of dollars in reparations. It's not going to happen. It'll never happen, at least in my lifetime. Being rich versus being wealthy are two separate things. And building wealth in my community, in the Black community, it's about legacy, and having the opportunity to build that wealth, I think, has long passed. Granted, long past as far as reparations. I mean, of course, we're building wealth. The Black community is building wealth in many endeavors. However, to have reparations solve that is a totally different thing. Uh, what my proposal during that mayoral campaign will bring us another type of wealth, knowledge. And for me, uh, some of my best experiences when I was younger and in school was in museums, was in the theater, was in the galleries. So opening the doors even wider. The money's there. No one can say that the money's there. Instead of funding the United Ways and the Catholic Charities and things like that, take that money or instead of taking that money away from those organizations, tell those organizations, use that money to invest in these different cultural institutions, and then allow more access to those institutions by offering free admission or greatly reduced admission to those affected communities.
Because it's not just about your skin color. It's not just
Yeah,
about
it's not- yeah.
where you're born, your ethnicity, your ancestry. In the land of opportunity, the American dream, it should be about trying to make that dream a reality for more people.
Yeah.
Actually, turn off my mic. Call me Danielle. It's about providing the ability to move upwards. If you cut
Right.
someone a check, some will use it responsibly. Maybe some will save it, build interest on it,
Right.
or make some other type of investment. Others will buy lottery tickets with it. You spin the wheel when you give people checks about whether or not they'll use it in the way you expect it to. However, providing services like what you suggested, providing
access.
access and opportunities,
Right.
it won't if it's wasted, if those opportunities are wasted, what does it cost the government? Not very much,
Right.
especially when you compare to just how much you can gain from having it. It's a much better return on investment just on its own.
When you mention the buying the lottery ticket, every time I hear reparations, it's the God honest truth. Dave Chappelle,
Dave Chappelle.
his particular segment on reparations. I mean, that hits, and to be honest, I can see that happening. However, to take the proposal, the policy piece for Aretha even further. Why instead of uh, singling out a particular community or two, why not make it free and available for
General.
all children under 18, all minors under 18, whenever, wherever, instead of always a reduced cost for students or reduced cost for a minor under 5 years. No, regardless of how old you are, 18 and under, you walk in free. You walk in free to see the latest production at Dr. Phillips. You walk in free to see the latest installation at the Museum of Modern Art, so forth and so on.
Yeah. You do make it sound really easy. I'm
It
sure
doesn't have to be difficult.
No, it does. It doesn't have to be. Of course, the hard part is making sure that those places can still keep the lights on.
Yeah,
And
they have benefactors. Look at the $1 billion Dr. Phillips Center.
Oh, yeah.
The city owns the Kia Center. I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
the Magic
They'll
could cut a
they'll
check.
find a way. And that's another thing you got to talk about with policy, because that's a counterpoint that you always hear. That there's nothing we can do. It's like, well, there's not nothing you can do, and a lot of policies aren't cut and dry and simple. I get asked often, by the couple people I know who have viewed the show before, or when I tell them about it, they always say that it sounds a little fruitless, right? You have people of all different political beliefs, all throwing in, headbutting views, all pushing for something different. And I say, good. If you have people with different views, that is how you reach compromise, and that's how you reach long-lasting policy. If you look at what we see in Washington right now, I'll just use our spending as an example. The Democrats, they can dream up 1,000 ambitious infrastructure bills, 1,000 great projects, great investments.
Sure.
But then they didn't really account for what the Republicans thought. They didn't really work hard to balance it most of the time. Then a Republican takes office, they say, well, we didn't like this to begin with. We're shutting it down. And now we've wasted billions of dollars of billions of tax dollars. You waste resources. You reach this reactionary state where one party gets in, puts the controversial policy. The next one gets in, pushes controversial policy, and they keep flip-flopping between sides. If you're unwilling to listen to what other people have to say, we're not going to come out here and tell you that you can or cannot have reparations. We'll say that reparations is to a degree the right thing to do, but we're not going to say that it necessarily has to be monetary.
Right.
You have to
exactly.
You have to look at the more practical angle. You have to compromise. I get the concerns of people who think that reparations is impractical. It's because they're given the perspective that it's just money, and when they say that it's impractical, the racist word is pulled out instantaneously. It's because you don't like black people. Idiot. And it's like, no, I mean, you take what they're saying into account and make your policy around it. You can make it better. There's always
sure.
a better way to do things. And if every policy solution was easy, we would have done them all already.
Right. If there is a sacrifice of any type of A financial sacrifice. Then let it have some dividends. Let's see what the return on investment is, and why not invest in our youth, in our future, as you know, both sides and everyone in between on the political spectrum would say. Uh, but why not make that investment in our country, in our youth, and open up the doors here in Orlando, here in Orange County, for youth to just walk in and take what they can from that experience. And if you feel like you want to cut a check, there's always the David Washington Social Fund. Great return on investment. Make my life a little bit easier.
There we go. There we go. How many more products do we have to plug, David? We need to make it down the list.
Lots of sponsors.
We need to make it down the list.
Sponsors for all of our properties, all of our content.
Oh yes, we always gotta plug more things. Watch a video I think it was either last week or the week before called "Reaction Video Need to Pick Me Up," and it's like the crying emoji because he loves his emojis in his titles. So we give it to him. Do. In that video, Virgil Hawkins, they brought in a bunch of school children to a courthouse. And in that episode, David and Angelina will go more into depth about the tangible effects of these experiences. We're talking about them here, you know, all these things that they're going to take away. What should they take away? Watch that episode. It's explained a lot better there than we can right now. Because we do probably need to start wrapping up here soon. But my final word is that you don't shut down people who aren't in favor of cutting checks. It's not generally because they're racist. It's because it's challenging.
Right.
You know, work with other people to make the policy better. You know, there's always going to be moral issues with individuals, potentially even entitled individuals. But individuals is not the sole angle of a reparations story. It's not that black and white. You know, not everybody is just entitled. Not everybody is just greedy. Some people, a lot of people, genuinely need it. It is undeniable throughout American history that there has been systemic racism.
Indeed.
And it has harmed our social mobility. Social mobility is good for our economy at the end of the day. You know, if you want this kind of motivation, it's good for the economy to have that. And it's the opportunity you would want yourself and the opportunity you would want for your children. So it's important for both sides to hear each other out and find the best ways. Doesn't have to be monetary.
Reparations can bring financial wealth. However, there's other means of wealth, and the wealth of knowledge, the knowledge of the world around us, the world that we live in, I believe, is more important in many instances than the amount of money we have in our bank account. However, it does help, you know, paying the bills. However, if we talk about investing in our country, let's start with investing in our youth. And if we're having that conversation about reparations, let's start moving that conversation towards what the return on the investment it would be investing in our youth, and maybe perhaps opening up these centers of cultural acknowledgement or improvement, the museums, the galleries, the cultural centers. That'll be a good start.
Heck yeah. And if you want a wealth of engaging content, you're already on the Jane Washington Network and you watch till the end. Please like, comment, subscribe. Don't have to watch every one of our episodes, but we have lots of different views on lots of different issues. We've covered everything under the sun, and one day we'll cover everything in the Milky Way galaxy. Every issue that has ever arisen.
It's our mission. It is the way.
This is the way. We're going to cover everything one day. But until then, if you like, comment, subscribe, it will help us a lot. I know it's corny to say that, but it will really, really, really help us grow our conversation. And we want to hear what you think. We want to hear what others think. We want to take more views into account into our content at any and all cost, basically. You know, unless you're a literal Nazi, then I'll give you this. I'll give you this. I'll give you this. With that, this is You Can't Make This Shit Up, a political podcast on the Jane Washington Network, and have a great day.